What is your primary motivation for stacking silver? Well, that's the question that I asked in the poll that I put out last week, and 465 of you voted in that poll. So stick around to find out why all of you smart silver stackers are stacking silver. Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. I want to take a moment to say a big thank you to everybody who voted in the poll last week and also everybody who left a comment. I'm actually going to be reading some of the comments later on in the video, so stick around because there were some good ones. And if you'd like to see more videos like this one, then down below, please give the video a big thumbs up. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell notification icon so that you can see all of the polls that I'll be putting out in the future and also see more great videos about stacking silver. So, what makes silver stackers stack silver? Well, let's go to the results of last week's poll to find out. Now, coming in at number 5 with 4% of the votes was the motivation other, let me know in the comments. And I put this on the poll because I know that you can't just pigeonhole people into 5 answers and expect that to cover everybody's motivations for stacking. And also, I wanted to encourage people who had a other reason for stacking to let me know in the comments below because, silver is a metal with a variety of applications, so there's lots of reasons people might stack. There definitely were some, let's call them interesting answers down there in the comments. But let's move on to number 4, the 4th most popular motivation for stacking silver, with 7% of the vote as a collectible hobby. I think this is a good motivation. I can understand why this wouldn't necessarily be your primary motivation and why it would be coming in 4th place, but definitely with silver bullion products, there are a lot of cool products to collect, no doubt. And while some stackers might just be trying to get the most silver for their money, with something like, say, this 10-ounce generic cast bar, which you can buy pretty close to spot, or at least it's one of the lowest premium silver products out there, you do also have stuff like these Monarch precious metals hand-poured 2 troy-ounce silver bars. And these things, although you do have to pay definitely more of a premium for them, are just so cool that, they're worth, I think, the premium in some instances. Maybe this doesn't compose your entire stack, but if you're into just collecting cool, shiny things and treasure, there's a lot worse things you could be collecting than silver bullion. And, with a hand-poured bar like this, there's a lot more work that goes into that. It's a little bit more of a work of art. Although it is still just really a bullion investment, it's just a really cool one. And, there's also collectible coins. There's all sorts of collectible stuff out there. You can get some of these kind of semi-numismatic coins like this 2-ounce Kraken, which if you get them at the right time, you can buy them hopefully kind of close to spot, maybe a little bit more of a premium than something like that 10-ounce bar. But these might appreciate sort of from a collectible standpoint, and so you might do a little better on your investment than just a bullion investor. So anyway, there's definitely good reasons to collect silver. And like I said, if you're going to be collecting something, I think you're definitely better off stacking silver than, say, collecting baseball cards or popsicle sticks or whatever else people collect. Now, moving on to the 3rd motivation for stacking silver with 17% of the vote was as a prep for SHTF. Now, that's probably going to be your folks who are stacking junk silver, I'd imagine, or maybe your American Silver Eagles. These would probably be a good form of barter money after an SHTF scenario. I don't know. These are pretty widely recognized. 1 ounce of silver, that's small enough for most day-to-day common purchases. You might not buy 1 can of beans, but a whole grocery order you could probably pay for with a couple of Silver Eagles. That's a little bit more of a serious reason to stack as a prep for SHTF as opposed to, say, hobby collectibles. And I don't know that it's necessarily the one that makes the most sense in the sense that SHTF probably doesn't have a super high probability of occurring in our lifetimes, at least, in the Mad Max sort of way. There's some that might argue that the past couple of years have sort of been SHTF nonstop. And I think there's some truth to that. This is a good reason to stack, but as you can see, it's sort of on the middle of the list here. But 17% of you are preppers, I guess, and you're stacking with SHTF as your primary motivation for stacking. Moving on to the 2nd most popular reason for stacking silver, and we have as a store of generational wealth with 34% of the vote. Now, this is an excellent reason to stack silver. I mean, if you want to just be sure that your wealth doesn't get evaporated over time by forces like inflation or currency revaluation or whatever, when you start thinking on a really long time frame, I think that silver and gold and other precious metals really make a lot of sense as a way to pass on wealth to your descendants. Because when you look at the long term, other assets, stocks and companies, or fiat currencies, or real estate even, I mean, none of that stuff has stood the test of time the way that precious metals have. You could have, let's say, your great grandfather, I don't know, some medieval peasant somewhere, or some lord or lady, whatever. Or, I don't know how many greats I said there. Maybe I've put you back into prehistory. But regardless, if any ancestor of yours had passed down, say, a silver bar or a silver coin to you, it would still have value today. But there's probably precious few assets that they could have acquired that they could have passed down. So I think it makes a lot of sense to stack silver as a form of generational wealth that you can pass down and will still have value in the future. Now, moving on to the most popular reason for stacking silver amongst silver stackers, it is as a hedge against inflation with 37% of the vote. Now, I think it makes just tremendous sense that today, in this day and age, this would be people's primary motivation for stacking silver. I would say that, your motivation for stacking probably would depend on the time and the era in which you are living. But today we are living in a time when inflation is all but guaranteed. There's just been a tremendous amount of currency created over the past decade and a half, but even more so just in the past 2 years. And it seems like it is an accelerating process. We've got this debt ceiling thing going on. Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury and the, former chairwoman of the Federal Reserve, she was saying in congressional testimony not long ago that if we didn't raise the debt ceiling, we would have to default on all of our debts and we wouldn't be able to pay our bills. And this is essentially an admission to me that the only way that we can pay our current debts is by borrowing. And, that's essentially an admission that the system that we have currently is a Ponzi scheme. When you can't pay out to your existing creditors without borrowing more money from, the next sucker, then you've kind of entered into Ponzi scheme territory. And I think that inflation is going to really be a problem in our lifetimes. Maybe it's not going to be this year, although the numbers are already going up. Over the next 10 to 20 years, the next couple decades, it's going to be a lot of inflation if we even manage to stay within the current monetary paradigm of, sort of the petrodollar and the US dollar being the world's reserve currency. I mentioned that I was going to get to some of the comments, so I'll get away from such depressing topics as the national debt and the deficit, and we can talk about some of the great comments on the poll last week. So first of all, from the Rusty Swan, Corey Williams, Mark Yoakum, Tom McMillan, and Thomas Couch, they all left some kind of a comment to the extent that all of the above was their answer for the reasons listed in the poll. Now, yeah, I think that all of the reasons listed were good ones, and I would say that I fall into, the various camps to some degree. But the point of the poll was to kind of force people to pick one motivation so we could see what the real driving force behind the majority of the stackers out there is, and, to what extent they weigh the possible risks and benefits when stacking. So, guys, I would also answer all of the above, and I do appreciate you guys all commenting. Next up, we have Andrew Gates, who said, as insurance against werewolves. And yeah, if you're holding some silver, I guess werewolves won't like you too much. But no, seriously, I think that there's a reason that in kind of the collective consciousness and in the mythos that we have, at least here in the West, with the whole werewolf thing, I think there's a reason that silver is the weapon of choice against these predatory creatures of the night. And I don't think that that's an accident. I think that the reason that the silver bullet is what takes out the werewolf and also the vampire, they both hate this metal. I think that the reason is because people understand that silver is real hard money, and we identify silver as money, and there is an understanding in the human subconscious that honest, hard money protects you against usurious behaviors by financial predators. And I think that that is absolutely the case. And I think that it's the reason that we've moved away from hard money. And as we've moved away from hard money, the financial system has kind of become more predatory, and the discrepancies in wealth between the lowest occupants of the social hierarchy and the highest has become more extreme. Fiat currency leads to all of those evils, and hard money really does help to prevent that kind of predation. So I think that this is a very insightful comment, Andrew. So thank you very much for leaving that. Now, next up, I told you we had some interesting comments. Goldkick Vibifel says, to pour pleasure instruments from during COVID-type scenarios. You know, silver is a versatile metal, and one of its characteristics is that it can be, you know, melted and cast into just about any shape or size object. And hey, it's antimicrobial too, so that's great. But, you know, I'm not going to linger on this one too long. Let's move on to Good Morning Venezuela, who says, most people are using silver as a hedge against inflation. Without disruption and a reasonable rate of inflation, this works. However, silver is dropping like a lead balloon as the prices of all necessities continue to skyrocket. So the price of silver is dropping at the same time that the dollar's purchasing power is dropping. That sucks. When this house of cards comes crashing down, we will see if silver still shines. Okay, well, good morning, Venezuela. To say that the price of silver is dropping, yeah, in the very short term, I would say this, but don't forget that it wasn't that long ago in March of 2020 that silver was under 13 bucks an ounce. So when we're at $22, it's not like that's an extremely low price. Also, it's typically been that the dollar index has actually been increasing on these days that we see the big drops in silver. And it's kind of weird because, you know, it's like every time these inflation numbers come out saying that inflation is getting worse, you actually see the US dollar index strengthen sometimes because people begin to anticipate that the inflation numbers are going to cause the Fed to taper. And so they interpret this inflation data somehow as the Fed becoming more hawkish, but I think that that's really not the case. I mean, I know the Fed has recently talked about implementing the taper and being finished with asset purchases by the middle of next year. It's very unlikely that we'll actually see that. And as far as the price of silver remaining low, it kind of has, you know, we have seen other commodities take off a lot faster, lumber, you know, food. I mean, oil is really moved up a lot, and we're beginning to see the inflation there. But any of these pullbacks in silver at a time of mounting inflation, I think really should just be viewed as an opportunity for us silver stackers to get our hands on more of the metal. The fact that silver hasn't taken off yet means that I'm just looking to accumulate more before that inevitable day comes. And of course, you know, none of this is investment advice. I don't give investment advice. I'm just a guy on YouTube. But I don't think that the fundamental case for silver has ever been stronger. And the fact that we're this far into the game with the debt and inflation and money creation, and we can still buy silver for these prices, I think we should really view as a massive opportunity. Now, Silver Trucker says, looking at where the dollar will be at in 30 years, I really don't want to lose everything I work for, would like to keep some of my money. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who knows what the dollar's going to look like in 30 years or what the landscape could look for. That's definitely a long-term timetable, but, you know, unless you're really up there, that is within your lifetime, more than likely, if you're watching this, the likelihood of you living 30 years is probably pretty good. So, yeah, you don't want to lose everything that you have by saving only in fiat. I would consider it to be very foolish to only have savings in a depreciating currency. Even if you don't have silver, I mean, some kind of an asset would be better than sitting in fiat. But also, you know, it just points to silver and gold's longevity as a store of value. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine not too long ago, and this is a friend who's really into cryptocurrency. And, you know, I like cryptocurrency. I think it's an interesting alternative to fiat. I like how it's, you know, fixed in supply, or at least Bitcoin is. You know, one of the problems is that there's all these different cryptocurrencies and you can kind of create them endlessly. So they don't have all the characteristics of, say, gold or silver, but they are interesting, and I think there's going to be a big future for blockchain. But I was talking with my friend who's really into cryptos, and we were talking about precious metals and the dollar and fiat currency. And I kind of posed him the question like, hey, I know you're a big crypto bull, but but let's say I had to hypothetically give you a box that you wouldn't be able to open for 50 years, and you've got to put $1 million in it. What would you want to put? Would you want to put $1 million in fiat currency like US dollars or a basket of paper currencies? Would you want to put $1 million worth of gold, or would you want to put $1 million worth of Bitcoin on a 50-year timeline? You can't open it for 50 years. And even he acquiesced that gold would be the wise option in this case, because while Bitcoin and crypto probably do have a future, I mean, they're a lot more speculative in my mind than precious metals. And as a long-term store of value, I think that gold and silver are just a lot less risky than something like crypto. So anyway, yeah, Silver Trucker, I agree. Getting your hands on some precious metals kind of ensures that you're not going to lose everything. It kind of puts a floor under your losses with your investment, because people are always going to need precious metals for one use or another, especially silver. It's incredibly useful stuff. Bill Dow says, I think the end game is to make money, to get a return on your investment, no matter how long you have to sit on it. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Bill. If you are going to buy physical precious metals and you're going to be a stacker, then you probably want to do that with sort of a long time frame in mind. You don't want to be thinking like, hey, I need to be able to flip this stuff in a year for X return, because one, precious metals just aren't that predictable. I mean, nothing really is. The dollar and the fiat currency system that we have has proven to be pretty remarkable so far. I mean, we've got almost $29 trillion in debt, and the dollar is, maybe looking a little long in the tooth, but as far as still functioning, it's still chugging right along. So yeah, you do need to have a long time frame to sit on this stuff, but I think at the end of the day, you probably will make money on precious metals. I mean, I consider silver to be probably the most undervalued asset in the world. Just about everything else, most other investable assets are kind of in bubble territory, and yet silver still seems to be the laggard, and I would view that as, again, a buying opportunity. I mean, you don't want to buy things when they're expensive. The time to buy Bitcoin was when it was $100, not when it's, $50,000. And silver is still at that base level, hasn't taken off anywhere yet. But I really do think there's a strong fundamental case to make for it moving much higher. So yeah, in the end, to make money, absolutely. That's a good point, Bill. Now, last comment I'm going to read, Erwin Macias. He says, silver is my savings account. Some people think I'm nuts for buying useless shiny lumps, but I think it's nuttier to let your money depreciate in the bank with rampant inflation. Also, I'm able to flip some of the coins and rounds that go up in collector value on eBay. Yeah, that's true. If you get bored while you're stacking, if every now and then you pick up some semi-numismatic coins like this Kraken, or some collectible little bars like these Monarch precious metals, if you hold them for kind of the medium term, some of these things do become a little bit more scarce, and they can get much higher premiums on them if you buy the right stuff. And you just kind of get lucky, I think, or have a really good collector's intuition as to what's going to appreciate. But if you don't mind dealing with selling stuff on eBay or person to person, you actually can flip some coins and bars that have a little bit more of a collectible premium if you take the time to do that, and then you can grow your stack a little bit more. As for silver being useless shiny lumps, yeah, they're real useless unless you want to do something like, build a smartphone or an electric car, and then you need some of this stuff. So I wouldn't characterize silver as a useless lump by any means. I mean, it's the most electrically conductive metal in the world. It's the most heat conductive metal in the world. It's the most reflective metal. So it has lots of uses. It's actually second only to petroleum in terms of the number of industrial applications. So yeah, definitely not useless, but good, Erwin. I like that you're treating silver as a savings account. I try to treat silver the same way, and I think that's a really good way to look at it. And I want to say a big thank you to all of you for watching through to the end. If you guys like this video, you like videos about polls, then check out this playlist right here so you can see more of those. And I will catch you guys next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.